With the release of last year's new Space Marine Codex, I was surprised to still see the Jump Pack Chaplain as an option, especially considering that there isn't a generic Jump Chaplain model available, only this Firstborn scaled Blood Angel themed one, so I've decided to make my own. Now in this video I have two goals. Naturally, the first of these is create a Primaris scaled Jump Chaplain, but my second goal is to redeem the new Sanguinary Guard kit.
But first, let's hear from the sponsors of this video. FlexiSpot. Sitting all day can be a real pain, literally. Now unfortunately, I can't really do much about that because all this here is a fixed filming setup. But my wife Laura doesn't have that same limitation, and that's why she has switched to a standing desk. This is the FlexiSpot E7 Pro standing desk. It lets you easily switch between sitting and standing with a single press of a button. As you can see, it lifts steadily and quietly with no jerky movements, just smooth operation. Even at standing height, there's minimal wobble, so whether you're typing away or just working on your next kit bash, you've got stability. Oh, and it's very solid. I can sit on this and it will still move up and down no issues, as it has a weight capacity of 440 pounds or 200 kilograms. So even if you do your work on a widescreen CRT from 1997 and want to display your collection of vintage bowling balls, then the desk can handle it. Alternating between sitting and standing helps improve posture, reduces back pain, and promotes better circulation. It's a simple change, but the benefits are huge. Laura is a wedding videographer, and so she spends long hours at her desk editing her films. By being able to easily adjust her work height, she's already felt a huge improvement in her comfort. But it's not just desks that FlexiSpot offers. As well as things like monitor mounts, drawers, foot hammocks, and even under-desk treadmills, there is also this, the C7 Ergonomic Office Chair. It's fully adjustable from seat height and lumbar support to the versatile armrest. So however you're looking to improve your comfort, FlexiSpot has you covered, and with them you get a high quality ergonomic solution without the high price tag. They provide all kinds of standing desks and ergonomic chairs to meet your requirements. If you're looking for a premium standing desk for daily use, then you can check out their E7 and E7 Pro, and if you use my promo code YTE730, you'll get $30 off your E7 Pro order. Now many people didn't like this kit upon its initial reveal a few months ago, and to a degree I understand why. But beyond the unit size reduction and change of weapon options, I don't quite agree with the hate they received. They are a little less ornate, but having built and painted those previous kits, I actually quite like their simplicity, which is why I selected this kit as the basis of my Chaplain build. The armour is just ornate enough to stand out against regular Tacticus armour, and the fairly limited amount of details allows me to easily add my own theming without having to spend a lot of effort to remove the existing decorations. After removing and cleaning up the torso and legs from the sprue, I then began to saw away the foot from the decorative rock. This wasn't necessary, but swapping out this basing detail would allow me to better separate my Chaplain from the original Sanguinary Guard. After cleaning up the cut, I then continued to use my knife to remove any of the remaining blood drop symbols. These included some of the pouches, the jump pack, and the chest. Continuing with the removal of the Blood Angel details, I next clipped away the winged fins from the jump pack, and I made my cut just behind the hinges, cleaning up the cut afterwards. After assembling the pack, I then replaced the original fins with these slightly smaller, more generic fins taken from the Space Marine Reaver's kit. Now it was time to add my own details, and when I say my own details, I mean some dead animal bits from my new kit. From this kit, I grabbed one of the smaller rib cages with the intention of attaching this to the Chaplain's chest. But first, I needed to clip away the ribs from the spine. Once these had been separated from the spine, I then began to work on the vertebrae. As I wanted to glue this to the centre of the Chaplain's chest, it needed to be both shortened and have its rear side flattened out. Once I was able to hold the spine nice and close to the chest, I was happy to glue it into place. With the spine in place, I could then reattach the ribs across the chest before then fully assembling the torso and legs. As you can see, with just a few small changes, the model is already quite different from its starting point, but I wasn't done just yet. For the arms, I simply used the original Sanguinary Guard arms because they come without hands. This meant that I could easily take those really cool looking relic skulls from the Black Templars upgrade kit. As it didn't feature any overtly Black Templar themed iconography, I could glue it straight to the arm before gluing the arm to the torso. However, instead of using the Sanguinary Guard curved magazine, I instead attached this box mag taken from the Grey Knight's kit.
This just kept it away from the skull relic. For the right hand, instead of the usual Crozius Arcanum, which I'm not a huge fan of, I grabbed a Mace of Absolution from the Deathwing Knights kit. The hand did need to be clipped away from the arm though, before I glued the Sanguinary God right arm to the torso, and then the hand to the arm. The Terminator hand is slightly larger, but the difference is so small that it's barely noticeable. With the arms in place, I could then attach the shoulder pads. As I wanted to assign this chaplain to the Exorcist chapter, I thought it would be cool to have an embossed chapter symbol. Now the Primaris Librarian does come with the perfect shoulder pad for this, but it's quite a tricky part to get a hold of, so I decided to make my own. This was done by cutting down a regular Citadel skull until it could sit flat against an Assault Intercessor shoulder pad. Once I was happy with the fit, it was glued into place. For the horns, I returned to my Dead Animal Bits kit and grabbed a pair of these small ram horns. These were glued to either side of the skull without any adjustment required before I glued the pad to the right arm, shortly followed by another Assault Intercessor shoulder over the left arm. With most of the model in place, I could focus on adding those extra little chaplain details. These took the form of a small reliquary, a pennant also taken from the Black Templar upgrade kit, along with many purity seals. I kept things pretty straightforward when picking the head and simply used a Reaver helmet. All that I did to this was to drill a hole into the neck and superglued a length of 1mm wire into it. This created a simple holder that would allow me to more easily paint the helmet later on. For the base, I created my own tactical rockery by tearing up a few chunks of cork which was stacked and superglued alongside a few more Citadel skulls. Finally, all I needed to do to finish the build was to repeat the same steps that I took to create the holder for the helmet and attach the chaplain to the base rocks. But before we start the painting, if you're enjoying this video so far, then please do consider dropping me a like or maybe even subscribing to the channel to be informed of my latest videos. The painting of my chaplain was kicked off with a black primer, specifically some of Vallejo's black surface primer, which was applied through an airbrush. However, any black primer would have worked here. Chaplain armor is black, and while I could have just used the primed black as a basis for this, I instead gave the whole model a coat of Doom Death Black from the Tooth and Coat range. This may seem odd, but it just meant that should I need to paint over any mistakes later on, the black paints will match. This was also applied via my airbrush, but it would have been easy enough to apply this coat with a regular brush. Continuing with the black armor, I then painted on a line of the lighter Faust Blue along the edges of the armor as a highlight to help lift those details out. This was then followed by a second highlight of the lighter Shadow Blue. This was applied as before, but I instead focused the application along the upper edges of the armor, recreating the light hitting these points more intensely. My final highlight across the armor was with Frost Blue, but where I tackled whole edges previously, this time I just added small spots to the sharpest points and corners. Combined with the previous highlights, this helped me make those details stand out even further. Continuing with the highlights, I now turned my attention to the remaining black areas. These included the segments between the armor plates, as well as a few of the pipes. These all were highlighted with some Dungeon Stone Grey. In addition to this, I also used this paint as a base coat for the parchment of all the purity seals. To help darken down the recesses of the paper, some Oblivion black wash was applied across their surfaces. From here, I could return to my highlights, using some Wizard Grey to extreme highlight the black details and as a regular highlight across the parchment. Before I finished off the greys with some small dots of Carcharadon Grey. The loincloth, bolter and the inner shoulder were then all given a base coat of Amphora Red. This particular red has a slight maroon coloration, which is perfect for recreating the colours of the Exorcist chapter. So if you're recreating the scheme on your own chaplains, make sure you switch this colour out to match your own chapter. These reds were then highlighted with some Emperor Red, followed by a few small spots of Centurion Red. My next areas of focus were the leather belt and pouches, which I base coated with Cuirass Leather, before then highlighting them with Boar Hide, and finally some small spots of Fur Cloak. This brought me to the metallics, and I started first with the silver metallic details, all of which I base coated with some Surcoat Silver. I then washed them with some more Oblivion black wash to darken down their recesses, and finish them off with a single edge highlight of Mythril Blade. Following the silver areas, I continued tackling the metallics by painting all the details with an initial base coat of Spartan Bronze. This was followed with a wash of Battle Mud. For the edge highlights, I began with some Dragon's Gold, before adding a few small spots of Glistening Gold to finish off. To paint all of the bone details across the armor and equipment, I started out with a base coat layer of Sandstone, which I then washed with some Archaic Sepia. Once my wash had dried, I then began my highlights with a 50-50 mix of Griffon Claw and Ivory Tusk. With the first highlight completed, I then applied a highlight of pure Ivory Tusk. However, I wasn't done with the bones just yet. To help darken down the recesses and to add a little texture to the bone, I then applied a very small amount of lightly thinned Cygor Brown contrast paint with a fine tipped brush. From here, all I had to do was to finish off a few of the final details across the model. These included the purity seals and eye lenses, which were base coated with Hydra Green, highlighted with Jade Green, and then followed by some Ghoul Green. Similarly, the wrapping around the mace was base coated with Royal Cloak, which I first followed with a sword hilt burgundy highlight, and then a few small spots of glistening gums. So far, I'd kept the left shoulder blank, but I wanted to apply a decal to it and a few other areas. But before any decals could be applied, I had to first prep the areas I intended to apply them to with a coat of gloss varnish. This provides a smoother surface that not only protects the paint beneath, but also allowed the transfer to sit closer to the surface, reducing that ghosting effect. From here, I cut out a few transfers from the more recent Space Marine decal sheet before soaking them in some water until they had lifted from their backing paper. Once they were ready, I carefully teased the transfers away from the backing paper and into place with a damp brush. I gave them some time to dry before then coating them with a product called Microsol. This is a mild solvent that helps to soften out the decal. This allows it to sit better across the surface. It did need a couple of coats to sit properly though, but if you're following this yourself, just make sure you allow it to fully dry between applications. All I was have to do now was to paint the base itself. For the rocks, I applied a base coat of Wizard Grey, which I diluted with a little water to make applying it over those craggy details much easier. To help darken down the recesses of the rock and to give it more of a natural dirty looking colour, I then applied a wash of Battle Mud, before dry brushing some Carcharadon Grey across them where the paint accumulated on just the raised texture. The remaining gaps in the base were then filled in with some of AK Interactive's Dark Earth texture paste. This is a thick texture mix which, when dried, replicates the appearance of Earth. This can take a little while to dry though, so maybe wait a few hours before continuing. I then picked out that raised texture of the earth with an initial dry brush of Noble Steed, followed by some Gyzmo Fur, which I applied a little more lightly than before. And with that, all I had left to do now was to give everything a coat of matte varnish, before removing the parts from their holders, scraping clean the contact points, and gluing them together, which left me with this. And here we have the completed Jump Pack Chaplain of the Exorcist chapter. As I laid out at the beginning of this video, there were two goals with this build. The first was to create a chaplain, and I think it's very clear from a quick glance as to what it is, and I definitely think that the bone detailing is doing most of the heavy lifting here. My second goal was to somewhat redeem the Sanguinary Guard kit. While it is definitely more minimalist in its design, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Especially for kitbashing. The armor is a little more stylistic than most Tacticus armor, which makes it perfect for creating your own custom characters and leaders. Even the leaping poses offer a little more dynamism than you could easily take advantage for if you decided to build something like a Raven Guard or White Scars Captain. All in all, I hope you enjoyed this build and that you can see the Sanguinary Guard kit in a different light. And as always, if you have any suggestions for future kitbashing tutorials, then let me know in the comments below. If you would like to recreate this build for yourself, I will include all the kits and paints used to build this miniature down in the description. And that includes my very own Dead Animal Bits kit, which is available at retail right now, and you can find some links to where you can pick one of these up down below as well. And once again, a big thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to improve your desk comfort, then be sure to check them out and don't forget to use my promo code YTE730 for $30 off on your E7 Pro. Now, before I go, let me just say a huge thank you to everyone who continues to help keep this channel going. And if you'd like to support me too, you can get early access to ad-free videos, exclusive merchandise, and even your name in the credits. Simply follow my Patreon link below or hit the join button. just like my top Patreon supporters did, who are now 5, Axel Jonsson, Berserker, Dakota Gaburi, Daniel Dowling, Gabe Benavides, Lil Il, Immaterial Creations, Maciej Savitsky, Matt Brower, Molly Mork, Morgan, Mr. Grimm, Nima, Older Than Time, Pale Juice, Ryan Little, Samuel Sepulveda, Snowman53, Swedsman, Tim, and War Novice. And my top channel members, who are Alex Verne, David, Doug H, Guy Bazant, Kutch Kato, Mark Taylor, Nerdington Paints, Omnitom, SO, That One Tech Priest, The City of Cryas, The Sire Acquired, Trooper Geo, and Whale Tussler. So until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.